Manor. Manor Post delivers exclusives to your email inbox every Saturday morning. One post per week could include important news updates, the latest developments on productions, exclusive discounts, previews of upcoming releases, and so much more. Plus, every single post will come with the macabre menu, a schedule of Manor Entertainment's programming for the upcoming week. Go to manorhq.com and fill out the subscription form on the homepage. Join the rapid growing list of subscribers by adding your name at manorhq.com.
Follow Manor online and on social media. You can find Manor on Twitter at Official Manor, on Instagram at Manor Entertainment, on YouTube at Manor Entertainment, and on the official website address, manorhq.com. As always, share with others and spread the word.
Warning. The following program may contain violence, explicit language, sexual situations, and dark content, unsuitable for some listeners. It is intended for mature audiences only. Discretion is advised.
Presented in cinematic audio.
Marco, I just want to talk. Shut up. You must have doubled back.
I have become that guy, running through the woods in the middle of the night, away from another guy who was going to kill me. And for once, maybe the first time in my life, I've done everything right. I've screwed up more times than you can imagine. But this one isn't my fault. I roll over a felled tree, one I cut down earlier. A big fat Atlantic white cedar that splits in half when it came down. I can't see, but I can hear him approaching. The radio again protests. Even if I can't understand it, I know it's urging him just a little bit further, just beyond that felled tree. I reach for the hilts of that buckskin knife Reggie gave me, but I don't pull it out. I can't kill a man. Even now I know I won't be able to do it, even to defend myself. I freeze. Imagine myself blending into the dead tree, vanishing. I imagine never being born. And then, when he finally leaves, I launch like a pinball into the dark. He definitely hears me. You ever wonder why the characters in Scooby-Doo cartoons, whenever they're running away from the Bride of Frankenstein or the werewolf in the dark, they always have their hands in front of them? I never noticed it before, but there's a good reason the animators made that choice. Turns out, when you're running blind, you need your hands in front of you to catch the wall or the tree before you headbutt it at full speed. Also, it doesn't work at all. I hear the crack as my head collides with something, but I don't feel it. Reality abandons me, and memory seeps into the hollow it leaves behind like water sucking into a muddy footprint. It's raining now. It's because I've been knocked cold. I'm back in the rental truck and we're navigating the slick path into the swamp. Reg is behind the wheel, bouncing and cursing with his eyes, squinting so much his teeth are showing. He's got his sleeve balled into his fist, wiping the fog from the inside of the window. I'm trying my best to breathe carefully and keep an eye out for falling branches in this wind. I can feel the truck sliding from side to side as we ride the brakes down.
Reggie, you plan on showing up to work today? Or are we, making rain angels?
We're making rain angels. You'll be happy to hear we've got one more today. Marco came in right before we left. Said he missed you guys by a few seconds, but I picked him up. He's got his paperwork all filed with the company. We're gonna get there probably in the next 5 minutes.
He actually checks his watch as he says that, looking away from the road. Reg, I say, fingers curling around my seatbelt. Jesus, man. Lightning arcs across the sky, splitting some distant tree into a million pieces and thundering through the chassis of our truck. The rain is so thick it's impossible to think of it as rain. It's all just one thing, this ride into the barrens, a single, wet, lurching existence. I wonder if I'll ever see my wife, Elizabeth, again. That would be a shame. A year later, and I turn up dead in the woods.
Who's Marco?
Marco, Vern. You talked to him on the phone. He's working chainsaw and skidder. The 6th guy?
The black guy?
I glance over at Reggie, who's grinning back to me, shrugging like, sorry, black guy. It looks sympathetic, and I've dealt with way worse working in this profession. Annoying, yes, but please keep your eyes on the road. The storm is still shredding the swamp when the truck rolls into camp. Lightning is flashing on strobe. Thunder roiling under the ambient cries of tree frogs. And 3 of the men are huddled under a tarp, catching cards as they blow away. Vern comes out to meet us in a rain poncho that ends at the top of his rubber Wellingtons. He's got a round face and a very bad mustache.
Marco?
Vern yells over the rain, shaking my hand and holding his hat with the other.
Charmed. All right, let's get the damn skidder off the truck.
A half-hour passes between us lowering the drop deck and actually driving the 15-foot journey the skidder needs to take onto the wet ground. It's a lot of shouting, holding hands up, nodding and motioning forward exaggeratedly. It's not the most thrilling part of the kind of work we're doing, but if you had to pick a job to sniff out the professionals, unloading a 21,000-pound piece of machinery in a driving thunderstorm will do it. I know that's the game, and I do my part guiding Reggie and the skidder onto the ground. Introductions happen next while Vern checks everybody's paperwork. Seems like everyone's responding to the paper ad, but it looks like most of the guys have worked together before. I'm the new guy, which is fine by me. First, we talk pay. We get 100 on the barrel head for showing up. The rest of it's prorate when we finish the job. We're cutting out a line for the county to drop a high-tension power wire right through the middle of the rain-soaked mess. And there's about 80 days worth of trees between us and getting paid.
This isn't a clearing job. We're just cutting them down. The company says they'll take care of moving the trees. We'll need enough moved out of the way to drive through, but it doesn't have to be tidy.
Yeah, question.
The skinny guy says with a wry grin. Bill, I think his name is.
Why are we doing this in April? Shouldn't we wait for a rainier month?
The job's for April. If you want to come back later, we'll be done by then.
He lets that hang in the air for a moment. Eye whites surrounding the skinny man. Skinny looks serious and turns back down the map with a nod, and Vern concludes the meeting looking from face to face, pressing his index finger on the laminated topography map.
April 11th, and we're out of here. We get paid, don't get hurt, don't you dare get lazy. April 11th. We've got beer tonight, and then when we're finished. Let's get moving.
The work isn't easy, but it's work. With the rain, our saws are prone to snags. I have a couple almost incidents that keep me retightening hot chains with bare fingers. Every tree fall we hear sends eyes up and feet ready to jump. We work far enough from one another, cycle back and forth to make sure no more than 2 men are nearby any given fall. 1 faller and 1 bucker per team. Basic stuff. The storm lightens after the first night. We work, trees come down. The skidder grabs huge trunks and whirs them inside like they're cardboard. We talk, we eat, we think about home. We sleep on cots under tarps or in the trucks. That first night, I wake up just in time to see the brightest flash of lightning ever light up the sky like daylight. I cover my ears and look over at Vern with a grin for a moment, waiting for the thunder to arrive. The man can jump. People complain like you'd expect them to. I hear about the strange smells, the feeling of being watched. I'd like to say that's unique on a job like this so deep in the woods, but it's not. You tend to feel watched in the deep woods, in the loud noises and the silence that follows. The smells are odd, though. I catch a whiff of it that morning as I'm walking out. Whatever it is, makes the heart race as soon as I catch it. Usually I only feel that kind of heart thump when I catch memories of home running through my head. Like when I hear Lisbeth crying as I sleep. And then I wake up and realize I'm alone. The job's into its second smooth day when I hear Reg call out.
You'd better take a look at this.
It's the way he says it that turns my blood cold. He's up a few dozen yards. If I hadn't taken off my hearing protection, I probably wouldn't have heard him so far off in the rain. He's supposed to be right behind me. He's standing very still, pointing. We head back, huffing cloudy breaths of air that smells somewhere between swampy cedar chips and used pine sol. At the other side of the hill, he grabs the sleeve of my poncho and points down at a tree we just felled.
There.
Yeah? I say, trying to remain calm to contrast Reg's escalating breath. What? It's a tree.
There.
He repeats, tugging my arm and loping muddy boots down the yielding moss. His finger is still pointing, shaking in agitation more the closer we get. I pull my arm out of his grip, realizing that he's got my knees trembling. I don't understand what I'm seeing at first. It looks like a fungus, gray and black growing out of the bark. Leaning down to look closer, I catch a whiff of a smell. I don't know what it is, but it brings me back to a closed-off exhibit in the zoo I passed by as a kid. Very strong here. Something's poking up, wrinkled and curled over. All 4 buds in the same direction. 4 of them, joined at a fleshy base. It's a hand. There's part of a hand growing out of the side of this tree.
Have you ever seen anything like this?
The hand is mummified. The black texture drops down to bone under the flesh, turning hard, weathered gray where it meets perfectly with the rest of the trunk. The fingers look like dandelion stalks, perfectly molded to the wood beneath, like the tree was liquid and turned hard around the bone. Fast, grab your tools. We're not staying here.
How's that even possible, man? They're just...
He brings his own hand up to his face, 4 fingers skyward as he does the bare-toothed squint back at me. I'm over the hill grabbing the chainsaw again, and I hear Reg contacting base camp.
Reg, I've been trying to get a hold of you. We, found something.
No, I say, closing my eyes and biting hard on my lower lip. I can't begin to imagine what we found something means in this context, but I don't like it. They're all at base camp standing around with mustaches in their palms, idly rubbing their faces without saying a word. The payday case of beer is hanging open, crushed cans littering around the central fire. Skinny, I think his name's Bill, tosses me a beer when I arrive and I open it up. I don't ask why we're all drinking. Vern sits on one of the camp stools and leans forward, running his hands over his bald head. He gives me side eyes and keeps his mouth open, like he's figuring out how to say this.
Boomer, found some bones.
His tone is surprisingly casual, the tone of a politician describing an explicit sex act under heavy lights.
Skeleton. Found a skeleton. A human skeleton in a tree.
Vern has a palm up, shaking it to stop the words. He's nodding.
We're trying to raise the, Camden County Police Department, but we're getting some interference on the radio. Now, it's probably just the rain, so we're gonna sit tight and keep cool. So, smoke 'em if you got 'em.
The next hour is a blur of people milling around, all of us smoking cigarette after cigarette, and waiting for some news that the radio was working again. People talk about feeling watched as they take long pulls of bitter, acrid smoke. Vern disappears into the truck where he's trying to get a signal from the main radio out.
I keep thinking about it.
Reg says, pulling me aside with a tug on my sleeve.
There's nothing I can think of that would do that, Marco. It's just not possible.
He crushes his beer can and tosses it into the glittering pile, beating up with a light mist falling all around us. He looks up into the cataract of a sky and lets the mist sprinkle his ruddy face with its deep, worried lines. And he laughs to himself, without a hint of a smile.
I've got news.
It's Vern, and he's standing with a handkerchief, wiping his waxy forehead.
The radio started working again.
Yeah?
I hear one of the mustaches say. Every eye is on Vern. A strange quiet has fallen over the camp. The sounds of spitting and the clatter of beer cans and the salt-pepper shake of cigarette lighters has stopped. Everyone's breathing on stealth mode, waiting for Vern to raise his voice over the chorus of frogs, and even they sound muted. He looks from face to face, like a father looking at strange, old children.
What did the police say?
Didn't raise 'em.
Only I seem to look away from him, uselessly at the trees around us, where invisible frogs are lowering their voices, like they have reached the termination of a season-long countdown. I get those side eyes again as he says,
But I have news. The company, let me make this clear when I say it. They know nothing of what we found. But unrelated to that discovery, they have announced a bonus of $22,000 if we hit our target 2 days ahead of the current schedule. Now, I don't know about you, but $22,000 is a very generous bonus in my book.
The silence grows, until we can now only hear the smoke pouring out of the damp coals of the campfire, and the sound of paper sliding against paper as one of the mustaches pulls another Kentucky Blue out of a soft pack in his shirt. The silence is punctuated by a lighter.
22 times 6, that's...
$132,000.
$132,000. And we can make it too if we get to work right away. If we don't, stop in the coming days.
The subtext of what he's getting at is clear enough. Calling the cops means a time-consuming investigation. We're all silent in the camp. We know the conversation we could be having. Someone should adopt a voice of reason and speak up. Give voice to the nagging feeling we've all got in our guts. Someone should say we can't do that. Open up that valve. Let us pick the other side against you. Let out the conversation in a way that doesn't have to sound like stifling justification. But a team is designed to work together. That's why we're here. We're here to clear a road and make money. And as hard as the mustaches are looking in their curriculums vitae, there is no room at the bottom for bold letters saying, conscience.
I was thinking, these skeletons could be 500,000 years old.
These are mustache voices. I tell myself I'm not contributing. I give myself that and think about my family back home.
They're pretty deep in the woods. People don't go this far deep into the Pine Barrens usually.
Lisbeth has got to be having trouble with me gone all these months. I can't disappear, never send anything, and come back looking like I just showered off a year-long bender. I realized then why I felt that pin-pricking terror as I waited by the phone for this job. This isn't a job. This whole goddamn trip is Lisbeth forgiving me for running out. I sent the money home to the kids. I did the right thing. And then I showed up with a mother lode and a bouquet of flowers. Really, we're not talking about a crime scene. We're talking about an archaeological dig. And the last thing we or anybody needs is some grad student cashing in on it. There's plenty of bones to go around. I could sit at the kitchen table with the kids off in bed that first night. I could show her the $22,000. I earned this for you. I worked for a full year, and I earned this and brought it home because I'm a good man who's done making mistakes. I don't know why we're even talking about this. As far as I'm concerned, we saw some weird-looking sticks and that's it. You find weird things on a work site, and you don't see everything you move. This is enough to pay off the credit card. You can start looking at houses again. We're going to be okay. People need power, and we're clearing trees for power. It's not our fault the Northeast has been inhabited for thousands of years. We did honest work, like your dad. We just cleared away land for power lines, that kind of thing. She could look at me, and she could be mad, but with something warm behind it. Something embedded deep inside that I could sprinkle water on in the coming months to make it grow. I make myself promise to give her a good life. Not just this time, but every time starting today. The roar of chainsaws echoes through the swamp like a half-dozen giant bees. We've split up, even more with the new schedule. We weren't cutting it close before without the bonus, and we're not cutting it close now. 6 men are going to clear this path, and they're going to do it in record time. I don't listen to the tone of my chainsaw as it parts the wood, and I don't look more than I need to at the trunks that fall. I have every intention of safely losing myself in the work, and then walking out of here seeing no evil. It actually gets easier with Reg doing his own felling on the other side of the next hill. Ordinarily, we'd have a bucker for this kind of work, someone overseeing and assisting with every fall. But with this new emphasis on speed, we've made compromises. We're walking in wide berths around each other, leapfrogging like perfect ants as the forest falls for us. Most of the trees are one-man jobs anyway, and people don't have the spirit for small talk. That only makes us move faster. It's just a couple of skeletons. Another tree cracks and falls forward, whipping branches in a wide arc that catches others and pulls down the spoils of the forest canopy. A gray collection of objects falls out of the side of it, but I don't look closely. I just keep moving. Still, just 2 skeletons. That night I meet with Reg as we head back toward our campsite. He's startled when I tap him on the shoulder, and I can see he still has his ear protection on. I chuckle, and he follows suit, but it ends too quickly, and there's a brief silence that follows.
You hear about Boomer?
I say no, and decline to explain that I'm still not sure if I'm going to commit the mental energy to memorizing every name on yet another work crew, since I plan on being out of here the minute we finish. Reg throws his thumb out to the forest and makes a quick hissing sound.
Psst, gone. Brent said he headed back home. Family needed them. He's probably out at the edge of the clear line by now. Gonna need to spend a night under the stars, but he's out.
That turns my blood cold, hearing that. Boomer's heading back to civilization, which forces me to acknowledge that it's always been an option. Tell Vern I'm out. Head back home. Forget about redemption and the 22,000. It's not like I can buy Elizabeth's affection anyway. A runner's a runner. Why not run now?
Hard to say no to that kind of money. But we'll have to work overtime tomorrow and the next day to make up for losing Boomer. Hell, we can still take our time if we want to cut it close. We're ahead as it is.
Back at camp, the 5 of us sleep under the stars. And I think about the previously unnamed mustache now trotting back to civilization, braving the cold night alone, for no pay. There's something out here that isn't worth it to him. Something's changed for him. If he walks clear through the night, he'll probably have a truck at the side entrance. But he'll still have to drive home on whatever was left in the tank when we arrived. I catch myself thinking about the logistics of it. And then I realize that if he gets back to the truck first, then he's cutting me off from my own early exit. But maybe you don't make it when you walk out of here. That thought keeps wriggling to the surface. I think about the trees and the skeletons. Something's going on here. People have died. And whether it's 1,000,000 years ago or it's yesterday, doesn't seem to matter. Those people ended up inside actual trees. That's not the easiest thing to push out of your head, no matter how hard you try. As I'm laying there on my cot thinking, I hear Reg say something from the next cot over. His voice is low. It reminds me of the one slumber party I went to as a kid.
Bill said he saw 6 today.
I'm staring at the blue tarp over us as it hangs dead in the humid night, drumming the occasional drip from the previous day's rain. I look over at Reg. 6? He nods.
All of them inside trunks, like the others.
I can hear in his voice he's grinning, unable to fully understand what he's about to say next.
And you want to know something really weird? All of them were missing their teeth.
I roll over and close my eyes, aware of every creeping movement around me. Ears focus like retinas on sounds as they slither or trot past. Every trip out to pee sends adrenaline pumping. Every flashlight drifting past is remembered long in the realm of dream. 6 skeletons sprout up from the ground like daisies and join the other 2 behind my eyelids. Next day is my turn on the skidder. The nice thing about the skidder, other than not needing to be on your feet all day, is the clock and the radio. That morning, as the other guys head off to do their felling, I rev up the engine and feel the protection of the fortified steel and plate glass cab. The headset connects to the driver's ear protectors during the day, and you can hear walkie-talkies and, if you're willing to bend the rules, bounce over to a top 40 station every now and again. I haven't been on a skidder in well over a season, but by mid-morning the machine and I learn to love each other for our faults. My morning is inside the machine, using the grabber to pick up the trunks of trees and drag them out of the way of our trucks, knocking over the smaller stuff left behind on previous days. Even through ear protection, the sound is deafening. Metal squeals and the white cedar I've got the engine pushing against begins to snap old roots and crash to the ground. It splits long ways as it falls, like a pea pod spilling out its contents from designated seams. I can't avoid seeing it this time. The rib cage that bursts out of the trunk is completely white. It's fresh, sleek. As it lays on the leafy ground, I can't help but notice it looks almost oiled. Other bones are nearby, each falling out with no attention to how they're organized. In the tilted cab of the skidder, I kill the engine and open up the door. Outside, the air is thick with that odd, animal smell. It's like rot, but the rot of something very wild and musky. It's the kind of aposomatic smell that deep tracts of your brain recoil from in recognition. I lean down to the rib cage, furrowing my brow as I pick up one of the ribs that broke free in the fall. Turn it over in my hand, looking at the serrated edge where the bone snapped clean. Inside I can see pores. In the pores I see tiny red dots. Wet dots. I get back to the camp just in time for lunch. Reg is there, sitting alone at the card table, listening to static on the truck radio.
Even the FM isn't working now. Not unless top 40 stations have gotten a lot more experimental while we were out.
He rolls the dial, making it hiss and warble like intelligent thunder. What direction did Boomer go when he left?
Same direction we came from. Direction of the trucks.
He motions back at the long swath of felled trees and rolling hills behind us. You're sure he went that way? Remember in school, you can only walk into the woods halfway. Then you're walking out. It would have been faster for him to just head in the direction we were cutting at this point. Reg shrugs.
Maybe he did. I don't know. Not my problem, really.
We sit and eat in silence as the sun starts falling behind the trees. I've got a full afternoon of cutting ahead of me, and despite operating the skidder most of the day, I've still got sore muscles screaming at me with every stiff movement.
We should be coming up on the inn soon. Wonder if that's why no one else is coming back for lunch.
Reg, this is going to sound stupid, man, but do you have a piece of paper?
I got a notepad in the truck, but I spilled some juice on it a couple of days ago. Will that work?
For the next 15 minutes, I write to Elizabeth for the first time. I explain about the kids, the environment, how everything terrified me and ran me off. I apologize 6 times in the note, and each time I scrape out another apology, the pen feels like it burns in my hand. I tell her I love her, and I tell her goodbye. When it's done, I rip the paper out of the notebook and fold it up, reaching across the table to give it to Reg. If something happens to me, give this note to my wife. She's my emergency contact on the paperwork. Best grab that too. Reg takes the pink paper and weighs it in his hand, frowning, looking back up at me.
You really think you're gonna die?
Just in case. Please.
Sure.
He nods, and we share that awkward silence between emotionally stunted men who can't avoid admitting something real has just happened. He's reaching a bundle out towards me, a buck knife in its carrying case. It's old, worn leather. As I reach out and take it, he says,
And take another lunch with you. Just shove it in your coat or something.
I want to ask him why, but not because I don't suspect what he's getting at. There's something weird about it, but only because he's unwilling to just outright say it. Things are getting out of control. People are disappearing. I don't know if I trust our people anymore. You might have to make a break for it. I take the knife, which is almost as weird as him offering it in the first place, and I take the extra paper bag lunch and stuff it into the oversized pocket in front of my raincoat. And I say goodbye to Reggie. When I get to the skidder, I can see Vern in the driver's seat staring forward into nothing. He's not moving. I get a chill when I hear a sound coming from someone inside the cab, and he turns to look at me with those piercing eyes. He lifts something to his face, mouth hanging open idly as he does, and he depresses the button on the camp's CB out radio.
He's here. What do you want me to do?
Through the glass of the cab, I can hear a singing moan, as if something on the other end of the radio were making the sounds of static with electric lips. It crests and breaks in the throat of that something. I can actually hear the odd shape of the thing's mouth as the tones crowd around it, escaping into an unseen microphone somewhere near us. When the static responds, I run. He follows, doggedly leading me deeper into the woods until, like a right and proper idiot, I'm struck in the head by a tree trunk. Other than laying back and having the past week flash before my eyes, there's this drumming sound in the distance. It's like thunder, but I don't hear it in the sky. It's coming from the ground, the world around me, from features of the land.
I'll find him, goddammit!
I hear Vern yelling as he turns about and starts heading back in my direction.
You just hold your horses!
Something has changed in Vern's voice, and in the voice of a distant radio that responds. It cracks and squeals unearthly from the speaker box he has slung over his shoulder, angry eddies and tides of meaninglessness flowing into one another. Consuming itself until the sound transforms into a quickening, sustained scream. It is joined. The scream from the radio bleeds into Vern's very real scream, the one that cascades down the hill and bellows against tree trunks. This is the one that fills my ears, growing muffled and drawing down into something vast and smothering. That sound plays chills down my spine as I stand frozen, wondering what I might see next. And then, when the last bit of mercy has left that moment, that scream snaps shut, all at once. I feel my way up the hill, lit here and there by silent electrical arcs in the sky as they split long, monstrous shadows ahead of me. In that blue flash, I see the microphone of the CB, swinging. Its cord leads up, spiraling until it hits the center of a thick, low, hanging branch above us. And then the coil disappears into the bark at its center. The bark on the outside cracks, as if containing movement, and a tiny piece falls to the ground. I don't know how long I run back toward camp, back to Reggie. I don't know what I expect to find, and when I arrive at the picnic table where he handed me his old buck knife, I see him laying face down, lit only by moonbeams poking out from the holes in the clouds. He seems to be moving. Reg! But I stop myself. There's a sound here. It's bleeding. Ambient. It hisses and slides as I approach, ready to drown out the din of tree frogs if I bring my face close to it. I back away over to Vern's truck, where the electric battery is hooked up to the string lights around camp. And I switch it all on, filling the whole camp with bright lights. Reg's clothes, his skin, are alive with movement. There's something underneath it all that's squirming and pulling at it. But he looks like he's trying to escape. But escape what? He lifts up his back and it all seems to shift underneath him. Then I realize what's happening. The whole of his skin is sloughing off his back into a single wide sheet. Reeling back, I look away, hand instinctively moving to my mouth and nose to brace myself. But I don't smell anything unusual in that space. Just the briny sweat from the back of my own hand. And as my eyes cast out into the cut line around our camp, I catch two reflecting dots from the trees staring back at me. The figure is crouched, low at first, but as I stare it rises up to a man's full height, unapologetic and brazen now, as those reflective eyes glue to me. And it steps, long wispy legs over the wind-dancing brush. When I say it's thin, I mean it looks like a skeleton. Long arms lead to clenching hands and legs have girth only at the knees. It takes long, silent steps and walks around me, eyes never leaving mine. They're orbs, human eyes in what appears to be the carved approximation of a human skull. It rounds the camp, past the fire and past Reggie, over to the open door of the truck. And it reaches in and switches on the radio. Its hollowed-out shadow of a mouth gapes as it turns back toward me, as if this creature can't help but look forever surprised. "Stay back," I say, hand grasping at the buck knife. "You're not going to kill me." To my surprise, I hear a response, but I hear it from the radio rather than the creature.
"We have never killed one of you."
The voice is slow, an almost perfect facsimile of a human. I remember back to the screeching static Vern was yelling at, and it somehow feels the same as this, even though to my ears it's unmistakable. Then, the words of what it has said creep into me, and I look back down at Reg's body, writhing as it splits and an impossibly thin wooden hand pushes out from his wrist. The thing splats its hand onto the wet ground, and the other thin being kneels over the unraveling Reggie to help it escape. "What in the actual hell are you?"
"Fairies. Mischievous fairies."
With one swift movement, the creature grabs Reggie by the small of his back, grabbing a thick handful of his flesh and pulling it up into the air so the creature inside slicks out onto the soggy earth below. The rest of Reg is in its hand now, swaying like a dripping rubber costume. The second figure, the one that had been contained inside Reg, slowly gathers itself and rises to its feet. I can see this one has teeth in its wooden mouth and bulbous bloodshot eyes that turn and stare at me. "You killed Reg and you live inside him?"
"I am Reg. My skin came here long ago to commune with the forest. I'd say it succeeded, and he's not dead. He's been through worse. He'll live longer now than he would have otherwise."
The radio says as the creature from Reg's body motions thin fingers at its own wooden chest. "The other workers, they were, what did you say, wood sprites?"
"No.
Just one of them. One of us to do the cutting, the other one to help. Faller and goes into the tree. Useful bits come back out. Once you're in the tree, we can work with absolute precision. We mold ourselves into what you are after the skeleton is extracted.
The skin from Reg contracts and distends wildly without a skeleton, as the tree sprite folds it over his arms like a beach towel. Tiny vocalizations sputter out from a gurgling, distorted throat. I reason with myself that there can't be a brain in there. Where would they put it? What cruel reason would they have to keep it tucked away somewhere inside? I remember the first claim of the wood sprite. We have never killed one of you. What would a creature like this call death? What about me? I catch myself saying aloud. It's quiet, a voice not nearly the one I want. The eyes on those things twist and look at one another.
You go home.
Why?
We have what we need.
I stare at Reg's wooden core, standing there stroking the folded, squirming skin he emerged from with long wooden fingers. I believe they'll let me live, but I don't have a reason for it. There's something else. It has something in its other hand. A crumpled up, pink piece of paper. What about Vern?
He was just a greedy man.
Shed no tears for him. His cooperation was not expensive.
I turn, ready to walk away, and I'm confronted with an impossibly tall stag standing silent over me, staring down. The last thing I see is it open its mouth, wider than I ever thought possible.
Hey, wake up, Snow White. 404 West Crescent. Everybody off.
When I wake up, it's in the backseat of a taxi cab. We're on a busy neighborhood street off the highway, and there's a familiar old song playing on the radio. The fingers snapping in my face belong to a cab driver whose voice sounds like it's ready to break into a shout. In my right hand, there's a stack of $100 bills. 2 stacks. $22,000. Still collecting my thoughts from the haze I'm in, I lean forward and hand the driver one of the hundreds.
What is this?
Keep the change.
Where's the rest? I drove you up here from Jersey. That's 4 more you owe me.
I count out the other 4 and hand them up to the front seat.
See you around, Marco.
Walking up to the front step of the house, I pause with 2 bundles of bills in my hand, and I stop short at the front door with butterflies fighting in my chest. I think about the past year I spent avoiding this exact place. The dull hopelessness I felt when it seemed for those brief days impossible to return. The bills are heavy in my hand. I open up the mailbox and drop them in. And I turn. It'll be enough for now. They may be better off without me. Quickly, quietly, I walk back toward the end of the driveway.
Marco?
I hear behind me right when I reach the road. The voice rises with excitement, a rush of momentum toward me.
Oh my God, Marco!
I feel Elizabeth in my arms before I see her face for the first time. She smells good, and I hold her there for a long while, as curious eyes peek out from the window at us. I don't say anything, just feel the tears well up as I hold her close and feel her breath, unloading sobs into my arm. This isn't what I expected at all.
God, it's so strange. Someone on the radio said you'd be here today. I thought I was losing my mind.
As I live in that moment, lumps in my throat hold me fast from telling her how much I missed her. My eyes roam to the old oak tree in the front yard, and I feel it looking back at me.
You've been listening to Manor House, Episode 25, Faller and Bucker. presented in cinematic audio. Subscribe to this show and leave a rating, a review, and general feedback wherever you're receiving this program. Share with others on social media and at home. Your feedback, as well as sharing with others, helps grow and continue future productions. Credits. This episode was originally recorded and produced in 2016. Performances by Christopher Ford as Marco, Atticus Jackson as Reggie, Rock Capuano as Vern, Brandon Boone as Bill, Trisha Boone as Lisbeth, Aiko as the Wood Sprite. Story by Chris Capps. Directed, produced, edited, and scripted by Rock Capuano. Audio and sound design provided by EttalSFX. Music by Jingle Punks, Silent Partner, Abysme, Jazzer, Audionautics, and EttalSFX. Additional music by DL Sounds. Theme song by Alan Postscript, based on The Shining by the Angelas. Cover art by Alexander Mendragiev. Manor House was created by Rock Capuano. Manor House is a Manor Entertainment production. The story, all names, characters, and incidents portrayed in this production are fictitious. No identification with actual persons, living or deceased, places, buildings, and products is intended or should be inferred. This production is property of Manor Entertainment, LLC. No portion of this production may be reproduced or used by any means without the proper written consent of Manor Entertainment, LLC. This production is protected under the copyright laws of the United States and other countries throughout the world. Country of first publication, United States of America. Any unauthorized exhibition, distribution, or copying of this production, or any part thereof, may result in civil liability and criminal prosecution. Copyright 2019, Manor Entertainment, LLC.